You're listening to the Holistic Nootropics Podcast, your home for holistic, evidence-based cognitive enhancement strategies. And now your host, Eric Levi.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Holistic Nootropics Podcast, where we discuss using nootropics, biohacking, and nutrition to help you boost your cognition. My name's Eric. I'm a nutritional therapy practitioner. And if you are new to the Holistic Nootropics Podcast, then please take a second and remember to subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube, then hit that little bell icon so you can get notified every single time a new video drops. If you're listening to the audio on your favorite podcast player, then take a second and subscribe in that app if you can. And if you do enjoy the podcast, which I have no doubt you will, then head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave the podcast a 5-star review. I'm talking like if you're feeling the podcast, leave it 5 stars. If you're not feeling the podcast, then you don't got to do all that stuff. But if you're feeling it, go leave a 5-star review, leave a thumbs up on the YouTube channel. And while you're here, take a little gander through the Holistic Nootropics library. And if you are somebody who is into nootropics and supplementation, then head on over to holisticnootropics.com and download a copy of my free supplement buying guide. This is a fully comprehensive guide that walks you through ingredient by ingredient on how to find the best quality supplements and nootropics on the market today. Because let's face it, there's a lot of junk out there with a lot of fillers, preservatives, excipients, all kinds of garbage that really doesn't do much for your health. So if you're looking to get the most out of supplements, then head on over to holisticnootropics.com and get that free supplement buying guide. Today on the podcast, I have Justin Frandson. Justin is a athleticism performance coach who's worked with professional and amateur athletes over the last 2 decades. Justin, welcome to the Holistic Nootropics Podcast.
Eric, thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you. We had a little fun chat here before we got started. You're into a lot of the same things I am. In fact, you coach a lot of the things that I am into, especially the athleticism part. And I'd love to pick your brain on some of these, kind of like upping athletic performance. And you've also got some insight into some really cool, relevant things happening in the world right now in terms of EMF and radiation and how to alleviate that and how to keep that from causing things like disease and chronic disease and a lot of issues that we're seeing. But before we get into all that stuff, I'd love to know, how did you get into this world of athletic performance?
Yeah, Eric, I was an athlete growing up and played some soccer and tennis and wanted to play collegiate tennis at USC and got hurt. So I couldn't even play. So I was a guy who always wanted to optimize my own health. Didn't really make it to the level of playing that I felt I should play at, because I was I consider myself a coordinated athlete, but I didn't get to the level I wanted to play. So needless to say, I ended up finding a career that could help me help others achieve their dreams. And so it's been a really fun program with some incredible mentors to learn a lot of this that we'll share with you today.
Very cool. Yeah. I mean, again, it's a common theme on this podcast that, a lot of people who, when I talk to doctors, when I talk to researchers, when I talk to entrepreneurs in this field of, health and wellness, a lot of it comes from personal experience, a thing you were dealing with, something that let you down. It's funny because it's like, some of these functional doctors I talk to, it's like, how'd you get into functional medicine? Well, I was dealing with this chronic issue that all the regular doctors couldn't fix. So I figured I had to go the next level and find this, kind of modern way of doing medicine, which is actually a throwback to, the years before the modern medical system was established. So and I have a very similar story of how I got into this, which was I was dealing with my own issues, and you're always looking for an answer. So that's really cool that you were on your way to playing, collegiate level tennis, and then it didn't happen, but you weren't going to let that stop you from helping others avoid the same, kind of ends that you met.
Definitely. Yeah. It was internal energy and not being able to create it, and then I had a few injuries. So there's a lot of ways people can get nicked and slow them down. So I really dove into a program called athleticism, where we solve all those challenges and get you really coordinated and allow you to connect with the infinite flow of the universe and perform at the highest level. And so it's it's been a fun several decades helping a lot of people.
So in your expert opinion, when you're working with athletes or maybe even like weekend warriors or people who just kind of get in and out of the gym, what do you find are the biggest things holding people back from really meeting their athletic potential?
Well, a lot of it is their energy field. I mean, which is really interesting. Eric, do you know Bruce Lipton? Do you ever follow that name in health world?
Yeah, the biology of belief.
Yeah. So Bruce Lipton is one of the biggest names out there talking about this intangible energy. And he goes on to say, basically, your health lies in your chi, in your energy field. And chemistry of your body is actually secondary. So when we look at the body, I got to look at their energy systems and making sure that they're amplifying at the level that they're capable of. And that goes into morning routines and prayer and nutrition and exercise and rest and own your power, hydration, sleep. The list goes on and on, grounding, and all these different components need to go into boosting that energy. And once they're there, and the subconscious holding patterns, I think would be number 2 reason for them not getting up there. They only subconsciously feel that they're worthy of X amount. So to allow them to get to that next level, there's some layers to peel sometimes.
That's so interesting because I actually think about this a lot as far as this idea of intangible energetics, especially since I've been, doing this podcast and building this holistic nootropics site and brand and diving into, okay, like in nootropics, it's like, hey, everybody just says, well, if we get more choline, if we take more choline, then we'll just fill our brains full of choline and then we'll just be working off this superhuman, surcharge of energy and motivation, and brain fog goes away and you just start hitting superhuman levels of production. And it doesn't work like that. Sometimes like the biggest boost that you can give your brain is just, reconnecting to your spiritual side. As crazy as that sounds, right? Like finding a new motivation to get after stuff, improving your sleep. Oddly enough, because we know so much about the gut-brain connection, chewing your food and having good digestion so that your gut can start to release some of this dysbiosis and start to improve its function will start to inherently make your brain work better. So sometimes I would imagine for you, you have athletes who say, well, I want to get my bench up 50 pounds, or I want to get my squat up 100 pounds. And sometimes it might just be, a little bit more intuitive, like, well, what is your motivation for wanting to perform better? Let's tap into that first.
Yeah. I mean, I had one, so I have a lot of facilitators that go to guys for more, bigger injuries or stuff. And one guy had a guy that was going out for the NFL combine. He couldn't bench 225 like 3 times. But he was this big, strong guy, and it was just his energy was just stuck. So I actually sent him to one of our energy workers and ended up, I think he benched about, probably anywhere from 12 to 15 reps, at the combine, which it's a little under where he could have got to, but it was far surpassed what he was doing before. But the energy, it's unbelievable how it can be blocked just in that scenario. Or I have lots of clients, not only professional athletes, but I have one of the top orthopedic surgeons in Orange County, Newport Beach, California, as one of my clients. And he's just a great athlete in a lot of different sports. But his energy, he said, is like, I'm off. I wasn't playing the way I was supposed to play. And what we looked at was his cross crawl energy. And so when I would just say, go march in place, he first went same arm, same leg. And I'm like, wait a second, your energy system, his energy system was off. So we teach him how to march in place and do opposite arm, opposite leg, not a homolateral pattern where it's same arm, same leg. So just really looking at the body, from that energy standpoint is massive.
Wow. I love that stuff. A couple of years ago, I was introduced to this idea of animal movement, which is like kind of reintroducing this idea of like crawling and like relearning how to crawl properly. And this, like you just said, kind of cross lateral movement stuff. And it's so funny because it was a personal trainer that showed me this stuff, this big, kind of jack dude. And he's like, yeah, before we touch any weights, I'm going to get you on the floor and you're going to crawl. And I'm going to have you hold these positions like, this leg out, this arm out, and then you're going to kind of touch your other knee with your hand. And I'm like, no, dude, I want to bench. I want to power clean. I don't want to do this stuff. And he's like, no, you got to do this because it starts to retrain your mind. And sure as heck, I was able to increase my squats, increase my range of motion, which is functionally for me, I'm not an athlete, but I'm just a dude who's getting older and I would like to, not have my body break down. Like these are movements that are so important, especially when you think about the amount of hip breakages and back pain that people start to deal with as they get older.
Yeah, definitely. Well, those primal moves are innate and we have innate reflexes and energy systems. And that's how this universe has created us and how we're one with it and how we flow and can connect to it. So that's part of it, is really this cross crawl pattern, getting these energy systems up, getting your chi to be able to flow, doing those necessary breath work and grounding, and all those components we talked about to get there are absolutely essential for performance and health and vitality and longevity.
And I think a really good example of this is probably like Tom Brady. If you looked at Tom Brady, if you didn't know anything about sports or you've been living under a rock for the last 21 years, you had no idea who Tom Brady was, and you were just at a beach and you saw Tom Brady in a bathing suit, you wouldn't think twice. You would just be like, oh, look at this guy, yeah, he's got a couple gray hairs. He's got like not quite a dad bod, but nothing like impressive. He doesn't look like he's got any muscles. You wouldn't know that this dude is one of the greatest athletes of all time. And it's just like he's getting better and better every year. I mean, this year he's leading the NFL in passing yards as like a 46 or 45-year-old dude. It's unbelievable. And I look at a guy and I go, yeah, he's working off of a different level. And I think about this with other athletes who have gone the distance like this. At some point, it's more than just how strong are you or what's your 40 time or, even your hand-eye coordination. Like there is another level to this that makes these athletes ascend to greatness.
For sure. And a lot of it too is brain typing. We've done a lot of work with braintypes.com, Jonathan Niednagel, his son, Jeremy. These guys, brain type athletes, you can see who can perform under pressure. And so Manning has, one of the optimal brain types for a quarterback where he can just sit in the pocket at the last second and throw it, not worry about getting hit. Where someone like me would be like, oh no, I gotta throw this, I'm gonna get hit. And so you end up making mistakes. But there's a lot of components that go into that. And he's got one of those gifted types. And there's a crazy story that I share a lot. And it was Ryan Leaf, Peyton Manning kind of intro, and Tom Brady's different, but this Peyton Manning Peyton Manning, Ryan Leaf came out at the same time at first round draft picks. San Diego Chargers ended up going with Ryan Leaf, which was a big mistake. And so he was probably one of the biggest just disappointments, in the history of sports for how well he was touted. And a lot of it had to do with his brain type and how he couldn't handle the pressure and stress. And then Niednagel went on, and there was an article in the LA Times in, I don't know, 1998 or something, whenever these guys came out a long time ago. And he would type all these different organizations and teams and positions, but he went on record to say like one of the two would be the biggest success and the other the biggest failure in the history of the NFL, and he was right. So it's wild to see that.
Yeah. Oh man. Because when you think about professional sports, it's like there is, I mean, there definitely is a barrier to entry, and it's all, physical athleticism. And I feel like when you're talking like the NFL or the NBA or professional hockey or Major League Baseball or whatever, pick your professional sports, I feel like you could probably like cut a line down and say, okay, obviously everybody who's at the professional level physically have all of the same characteristics, right? They all, you can't even go to the combine unless you can run, if you're a running back, a sub 4.5, 4.40, or throw a 50-yard bomb, off your back foot or whatever, right? But then there's that intangible force. It's like, well, how does a number 1 draft pick and a Heisman winner in college just get completely tossed out of the league by their 3rd year? How are they selling insurance and they're 26 and just 3-4 years ago they were touted to be the next great Brady, Tom Brady, or Emmitt Smith or whatever. And I feel like there is, I can't put my finger on it. Maybe because you've worked with so many people, better than I. But there's definitely something to that. And then on the other end, you have the guys that are picked in the 4th, 5th, 6th rounds, or they go undrafted, and next thing you know, they're making the Pro Bowl. They're in the NBA All-Star game or whatever it is. Like, there's these stories just constantly of people either outshining or underperforming whatever their expected level is. And there's definitely an energy component to that.
Yeah. There's so much to it, so many parts. And our program, like a guy named John Mallinger, is PGA golfer, jumped up 90 spots on the tour. Before me, my mentor was Dean Brittingham. He was a strength coach in the NBA and NFL. And he had, when he got out of working with organizations and just privately, he had Jim Courier. And Jim jumped from 25 in the world to top 5 in the world in a period of 9 months doing our program. And you have these big jumps from guys, and Jim didn't have the brain type to do it, so it was developing that coordination so we can overachieve on the genetics and our brain types by opening up these energy systems and being more dynamic in so many different ways, and really connecting to abundance and the vibration of that. And this is real stuff. And I mean, we wouldn't be having this conversation, Eric, if it weren't for that type of waveform, interaction that we're experiencing, to see each other, to hear each other.
Oh man, I love this stuff. It's so cool. And it's not just athletics too. It's all these other realms of life. It's business. This is like, I think about this book, Think and Grow Rich, where, Napoleon Hill, he's interviewing Andrew Carnegie, and, Carnegie is just like, it's just how your brain works. Like, there's nothing, I wasn't gifted with any super talents. I built this steel business on my own, but it like, I'll tell you from conversations I had with me and JP Morgan and all these guys, it's like, we just work, like Henry Ford, Edison, like we all just live in this different energy level of thinking that the universe is abundant, and we just have to make sure that we show up every day with the right attitude and the right perspective to make sure that we can get a little bit of what the universe has and always kind of be giving back.
Exactly, because we are one with her. And that is the thing that people just they don't see. There's a disconnect there. It's like we're above it or we're different from it. We can control it. That's not something that is you want to mess with. Like the universe, we're one with it. And when you can really rev with her and get in the flow, you're going to see your performance go up, your health go up, your bank account, like everything.
So as we talk about energy, I've had a few people on here talking about red light and near infrared light and light therapy. And this is where I really started playing with this idea of like bioelectric versus biochemical, because it was a guest that I had on here, and he goes, hey, everybody believes that we're biochemical beings, but really we're more bioenergetic. And, I've been taking, I've been studying organic chemistry, for instance, and chemistry, and diving into atoms and energy levels in atoms. And when you go down to the atomic level, the subatomic level, when you start looking at protons and electrons and neutrons, the nucleus of, the way that you get intermolecular bonds is physically by atoms jumping to different energy levels. So even when we're talking about the biochemical, there is a tremendous bioelectrical component to this. And, again, I go back to the nootropic space. I go back to the supplements. So the supplement industry is $100 billion industry. And yet in America, we're chronically ill to the tilt. Like over 40% of adults are obese. It's not even overweight. It's obese now. And yet somehow everybody's taking supplements that are supposed to help your health. Everyone's taking pharmaceutical drugs which are supposed to help your health. And we're still failing miserably. So it almost feels like we are completely ignoring this total other side of the story, which is the bioelectric abilities of us as humans.
Definitely. Well, we have energy field in our body, and the way a lot of it communicates is through light. And so when I do nerve work on the athletes, I can get concussions back really fast. We can get their muscles to fire faster, to talk to the nervous system through working with a red light therapy. I mean, just right here. Mm-hmm. This is a GRT light that I use. It's one of the lights, but they're fantastic with it. And then, we got to realize that our body's a big conductor. It's energy and water. So, when you put in basically a smartwatch or something on your wrist, cell phone on you, it's going to change that electricity. It's different than how we're made. And so it can be disruptive. So yeah, we understanding biology, physics, waveform, and then I love the kinesiology components as well. And all that goes into that nutrition. These are things that should be pillars for education, and they're just so missed most of the time, which is a challenge for me.
So let's talk a little bit about EMFs. You have a site called emfrocks.com, and you're talking a lot about EMFs, and I've seen a lot of information about EMFs. I've read a couple books on this. I've read these articles, but I still really don't understand, what these EMFs are. Sometimes I feel like, you have two sides of it. You have one side of it of people that go, EMF, this is like nonsense. This is like hocus pocus. It's like invisible, like nobody cares. And then you have this other side of it that's like, oh my God, like I talk on my speakerphone from at least 20 feet away. I don't like carry my phone. And I'm big on this too. Like I really try hard not to keep my phone in my pocket. But it's so difficult. I have like a cover for it that's supposed to block EMFs. But you seem to be an expert on this. Talk a little bit about, what these EMFs are and the role they play in our lives right now.
Well, let's break it down, and this will really simplify it for everyone. So we talked about the universe being electric and us being electric. When we're sleeping, we have brainwave states. We're like 1 or below 1 to 8 hertz or waves per second. Everything has a resonance. And so we really rev close to the Schumann resonance of the Earth. That healing pulse Earth was a 7.8 hertz or waves per second. And remember, the Earth has a negative ionic charge. Eileen McCusick talks about it in her book. She does tuning fork therapy, but you get this negative ionic charge from below, and from above, you get a positive ionic charge. And that would be from the sun, from unpolarized waves. So the sunlight, it distributes equally in every direction. And that's, if the sun were a one-directional beam, we wouldn't be here. It would be too strong for us. So our bodies do really well with waveforms that are slower in wavelength speed, and then also that are unpolarized, distribute equally in every direction. Now, when we go to a cell phone or any man-made technology, they would not exist if they weren't one-directional waveforms. Okay, they're one-directional. So that's why a signal going in and out of a transformer have to meet, or you'll have lots of dirty electricity. They're each going one direction. So with this, let's talk about the wireless stuff. We're looking at 5G is 60 to 90 billion waves per second. I just said we sleep at 1 to 8. I mean, that's a big difference. So when you add 10 zeros to anyone's bank account, significant difference, right? Same with a waveform. When you add 10 zeros to the speed of a wave, that's one directional. that's the polar opposite charge of how we are in Rev, our bodies are going to respond to that in different ways. And so what happens is we end up breaking down from it. And Dr. Martin Pall discovered that the voltage gated calcium channels let in positive calcium into a negative cell. That's excess calcium. That's not a great recipe for health. You don't want that. So that vibration, that secondary vibration effect is how this man-made stuff, really affects us. And then we get into the cognitive stuff, and then the more severe, the muscle twitches, bleeding, nausea, and then you go into the bigs: Alzheimer's, suicide, dementia, fatigue, Alzheimer's, suicide, dementia, and then cancer, diabetes. Talk about bad food. Diabetes kind of took the cake on, and with all the bad food, but all those have always really, the bell curve has gone up and up and up since we introduced electricity into our space. And now the one that's really popping up is the lack of fertility from EMF. So that's a big challenge right now. And so we're allowing this immigration to come in so we can keep that population up there. But that's kind of the basics on the EMF.
So what do you say to someone then, who's very skeptical about this? They want 5G. They want they want their refrigerator to talk to their stove, to talk to their TV. They want to tell Alexa, on their TV to fire up their stuff. Because God forbid they have to walk 5.5 feet over to their stove and boil water for themselves. But, or they want to watch, like a movie on their 4K, whatever phone while they're in the middle of the jungle, what do you say to somebody who says, no, but yeah, all that stuff's going up, but it's also going up because of fast food and hydrogenated oils and all, or what, name the thing that causes cancer, right? What do you say to that person who's very skeptical about all this stuff?
Well, first off, you guys, it's just physics. Look at the waveform. So these waves they're actually waves, and you can get a meter and meter them. So, I would just say, let's go get an acoustimeter and see how quiet your phone really is when it's not on. Because the second you point it at it, the meter's going to scream off the charts and meter out. It can't even read the level, because it's so high on the phone. It doesn't even meter that high. So there's no meters to meter 2.45 billion waves per second coming off of a cell phone even. So when you show a child, I have a daughter, you show her hey, this is a cell phone. It looks like it's quiet and still, but it's kicking off the sound and vibration that most humans can't hear, but the animals can hear, and these meters can detect. That changes their entire perspective on what this stuff is. And then we inform them that they're one directional and a polarized charge and really fast waves, because it's dude, we're across the world. How can we talk and have this quality of a conversation with this responsiveness unless these waves are traveling just billions of waves per second? So we start to understand all these components, and then where we really thrive. And with athletes, Eric, when you're in the zone and you're flowing, you're at 8 to 12 hertz or waves per second. Again, really low and slow. So we show them how we rev, how the earth revs, that Schumann resonance, 7.83 hertz, and then how different the man-made is. Get them a meter to quantify it. And then I might even introduce them to the Invisible Rainbow, the book, The Invisible Rainbow by Arthur Furstenberg. And the other book would be The Contagion Myth by Tom Cowan, MD. So these guys talk about the electrification of our atmosphere and how it changes our world, and how birds are affected, our nature is affected, how our bodies are producing viruses to adapt to this. So we can go in and talk about the real stuff behind this stuff, behind these intangibles that amazing doctors like Tom Cowan are understanding because he's worked with the body for decades, and then he's worked with soil for decades, and he realizes how interconnected we all are.
I can get into this in terms of like anxiety and depression, with cognitive issues, because it's really funny that like I'll sit here and I'll meditate in my home and I'll just sit still, or I'll do like breathing exercises, and then I'll get really dialed in, more dialed in than even if I'm just kind of like whatever, chilling, like to the point where it's like I can hear all of the sounds around me. And it wasn't until recently that I was doing this that I started to notice, I'm like, there's just like a constant low level buzz, like you don't hear it while you're going about the day, but you just kind of hear it. And I'm like, if I go out to, there's this spot in the jungle that we go to every couple months. It's just super chill. It's like glamping kind of, but I mean, it's like fully sustainable. Like there is a Wi-Fi connection, but I mean, otherwise you're just in like the middle of nature. And it's just so crazy when you go from like your home and it's quiet to nature and it's quiet. And it's somehow much quieter out in nature. And you realize when you silent everything down, there is like this low level buzz, and you got to think like that's got to have some effect on the brain. Like because again, we're all working off of these, these energy waveforms. Like that's got to have some effect on brain waves.
It does. You're so right, and so aware to observe that. And even if it's low level radiation or electricity, which measures up the 50 waves per second on up into the 60,000 to, whatever it is per waves per second. Electricity, the measuring of electricity has to be, 1 milligauss or lower. So it has to be a very slow waveform or below for us to be able to be good with it, according to bioinitiative.org. Then you go into dirty electricity, which is a faster wave, 50,000 on up to several 100,000 waves per second. And then you go up to the wireless, where they measure in the millions to billions of waves per second. So all that has a sound to it. And I had an experience where I was in my room, family's out of town, I was just dialing down, I was watching a movie, and then all the electricity went off in the whole house, and it just literally was like, and I didn't realize what quiet was until all the electricity was off in the home. And we live with this low level radiation, which is a massive stressor, equally as of a stressor as the higher stuff, according to a lot of the studies. And it's definitely challenging us. And what we're seeing is over, several years ago, it was 10% of the population is EMF sensitive. I would double it by now because of all the effects that are going on. And we sell these grounding bags at doctor clinics all around the country, and they wouldn't be selling them like crazy if their patients weren't having challenges with it. So this is a big, big thing that we got to look at. And the cool factor is the grounding bags, EMF rocks, we have grounding bags, and they do what Mother Nature does because they're hand mined crystals inside, but they convert that waveform. So now we can coexist in this new electrification of man-made radiation, in our homes and all around us.
So can you explain grounding? Because I know the concept, but I just don't know. I don't get the science of it. I've heard this. You were mentioning negative ion thing here. What I try to do at least a few times a week. Like I'm fortunate enough to live right by the beach, so I try to get into the ocean a couple times a week. I definitely try to get my feet on the bare sand and just soak that all up. But and then there's that thing too, where it's like, you go out into nature. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find somebody that doesn't feel better after you spend at least maybe even like an hour, in nature surrounded by trees. So can you explain how that works a little bit and how that counters, these EMF effects?
Definitely. The Earth has a Schumann resonance, and it has a negative ionic charge, and we pull the electrons from that charge to charge our cells in our body. So when you're barefoot in the water, I surf a lot, and go out in the ocean all the time. And when you can do that, you can ground out all the electricity really well. So it's like an earthing rod going into the earth or the ground. You want to have that going down in there, and it's just it's awesome to experience that earthing, that grounding capacity. So what you want to do is you actually get grounded by nature. So that's where you're pulling those electrons from it. So really important to be out in nature. You can get the positive unpolarized waves from above, from the sun. So the sunlight's so beneficial for us. And then, the ocean has that negative ionic charge. It feeds us. Tom Cowan, MD, he had me on his podcast as well. And he talked about one of his patients who was an electrician. And the electrician had just unbelievable exposure to electricity. And this electricity was not a challenge for him because he was surfing a lot. Well, he fell, got a rod in his arm, ended up having lots of heavy metal in it, was out of the water for some time, kept doing his work, but that rod was more of a conductor and he wasn't grounding the ocean. He started having massive health challenges. So we know that when you're not grounded, you're not going to be able to heal quickly, and then you'll start to have some other stuff that goes along with you, that could go wrong. Clint Ober wrote a book called Earthing, a fantastic book talking about earthing and that capacity of grounding, people. So there's a lot there. You won't have pain when you're grounded. You're going to heal. You're going to recharge your energy field, that biofield. Remember that energy field's first, chemistry second. So we really want to, amp up and get grounded by nature.
Yeah, I definitely have begun to accept this idea of energetics, and really put a hard focus on that, more so than, because for a long time I was like, it's all about nutrition, and then I was like, it's all about supplementation. And now I'm really kind of coming full circle back to, yeah, it's all about sunlight. It's all about getting out in nature. It's all about getting away from appliances and things that are plugged in and, so many signals everywhere, and just trying to optimize your bodies. Because I really believe that even if you have a suboptimal nutrition plan, like if you eat the standard American diet, yeah, that's awful. If you're drinking soda, if you're drinking alcohol, whatever it is, I still feel like you have an out where if you can get into the sun for 20 minutes a day with your shirt off, if you can go stand next to a tree with your bare feet in the grass, in an actual, wilderness situation, not like Central Park, not like where the grass is over cement, whatever it is, I feel like you can still be somewhat optimized even with the other stuff. Whereas if you have a perfect diet with the right supplementation, but then you're not getting sunlight, you're not getting, the negative ions from nature, you're still going to feel like you're missing something.
Definitely. Well, let me share this with you right now. We just purchased a home, and there's a transformer out in the front, kind of neighboring my property and the neighbors, and we're having high levels of dirty electricity. So we just purchased it. We haven't moved in yet. I'm going through the process of unraveling where that static electricity is coming from. Is it the transformer that's underperforming, that needs to have more power to it to support everything, which will lower the static? Is it the lines going in and out of it need to meet because rats ate the lines? Is it the own wiring in this house because it's an older house? Is it a neighbor having, solar? Yeah, the list goes on and on as far as what it could be. Yeah, but what we do is there's going to be some of the components that we can just jump down in and go in to find the earthing rods and ground out some of this electricity. But if we go into an area that's dead, we're not going to get the benefits from it. We have to find a power center, to be able to ground it out. And it's all biogeometry stuff. So there's so many fun components to understanding these intangibles that even me, who's been in the field for a while, now I'm dealing with it on my own home and looking into it, and really we're troubleshooting, just solving these challenges. And I'll find that static and we'll get it to a healthy level, because a lot of these things, whether it's an electric car, a new car, all these, the electricity in your homes, they're manufacturing challenges, what are mostly causing people to be sick. We remember, we can ground the stuff out and get those signals to not have lots of static in them. And when we can do that, we're going to start to be benefited by it. So you got to have every outlet's got to be ground. There's got to be groundings on the main. You have to have the signals going in and out meet, like all these components have to come together for your home to be a healthy home. And then even with that, then we get the grounding bags to transform that waveform to make it healthy. So you can just put them in a sick home. So I could load up my home with a really high level of stuff and be fine. But I want to find out, like, hey, where is the stuff manufactured flawed? Where is the flaw? Fix it, have a proximity awareness, make sure these signals are really at a safe level, and then use products like our grounding bags to help you transform that waveform so it doesn't affect you. So there's so many components, Eric.
And I've heard people talk about this grounding sockets, electric socket. What does that mean? How do you do that?
They have just a line that goes into the ground, so that everything has to connect back down to the ground. That's how they do it.
So what if you live in an apartment building? What is there a way to deal with it at that point? Like if you're on the 5th floor, 10th floor or something?
Yeah, ultimately all the electricity can be connected and go back into a ground in the ground. But sometimes they don't always wire it right. So that's why the grounding bags are an incredible, answer for you, because no matter where you are, you're pulling in that healing pulse of earth, that Schumann resonance, that frequency healing, and you can convert a waveform. You could tap on it with one hand and then cover your eyes or teeth or thymus or intestinal area and recharge those areas that get decharged. I mean, it's really, really powerful when you find the right source and you bring it to you.
And how do you use that grounding bag? Do you just leave it, next to your bed? Do you only have one, or do you have several kind of placed throughout the home?
Yeah, use it as is. So you keep it sealed, because the crystals in there have moisture properties in them. They've been compressed from an underground water source. So use it as is, put it on or under your bed, desk, or car seat. And then you put 5 together in addition to that one on your bed. You put 5 together in a pile on the floor somewhere in your home, centrally located, and that'll clear the vibration of a 2,000 square foot area. So there's definitely protocols for clearing your bed, your desk, your car seat, which would be sources of EMF, because if your bed's touching the wall, it's charged to the level of the outlet. Same with you're sitting in a car, and if it's an electric car, you're sitting on a battery, the whole front dashboard's electric, and the whole thing's self-driving, wireless. So that's a really big recipe for a lot of EMF. And so we want to have some grounding bags behind your seat. So there's protocols. And then, like I mentioned, the tapping can actually clear your energy field of any stuck EMF. And then when you direct that to your eyes, your teeth, your thymus, or intestine area, it can recharge those areas that are the most sensitive to being decharged.
Wow. So you're going to disappoint a lot of the Tesla owners who listen to this podcast. They're going to be like, oh my God, I didn't know this thing was a death trap. I thought it was modern technology.
They are cooking families. I will go on the record saying that. But the cool thing is again, we can coexist with man-made EMF. You just need about, a handful or 7 grounding bags behind the driver's seat to convert that waveform, because you're sitting on a big ass battery. Yeah, that's not a great recipe for the body. I had a colleague that did blood work, and he was in special forces, working with the elite military, formerly with professional athletes, got called in with the military to do some blood work. He threw in a variable with the guys of testing the guys driving electric cars. It was the biggest marker change in his blood analysis, 18% lower testosterone. Wow. So you can take a healthy person that thinks they're doing great for the environment, which electricity is not an answer, or electric cars aren't the answer. Solar is not the answer, because you're still mining cadmium and using coal to make these batteries. They do them in other countries. We're still, the wattage that it takes to recharge these is absorbent, and then you're left with a dead battery with acid filling up our mines field. So anyhow, it's not the best recipe for success, but the cool thing is we can convert these waveforms. Like, you can load up your car with, I have a lot that I've gotten rid of. I've been able to coach to get rid of Teslas and such. And I have several that are just so in love with them that they won't keep them, but they just load it up on grounding bags and their health hasn't deteriorated. But man, if you take a healthy person right now, Eric, and they think they're doing right. They think they get the shot because everyone says get the shot. They think they're driving a Tesla because it's great for environment. Right there, you just lowered a guy's testosterone from, a healthy testosterone is 1,000 to 1,200. You lower them 20% with a shot. You lower them, almost 20% driving an electric car. That puts them in a 600, testosterone range, which prostate, bones, there's going to be so many other challenges, obviously cardiovascular stuff that could go wrong with lower testosterone. And your other mechanisms, your other systems will start to, really degrade like really quickly when that shift drops. So that we got to look at some of the effects of these invisible waveforms on the chemistry of our body to keep our life force up.
Yeah. And I mean, testosterone is a big one for the dudes out there. I mean, probably more than any emails I get are, hey man, what do I take for testosterone? What do I get for testosterone? And I'm curious, have there been any like specific studies, any randomly controlled things, or, observational studies, or even like any papers written about the physical mechanisms in the body, be it enzymes, red blood cell, whatever it is, that EMFs like these in these waveforms, like they've documented and seen in a laboratory setting, like them actually being affected?
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, just 18% lower testosterone driving the Tesla. Bioinitiative.org had 40 countries, over 200 scientists. They have about 15,000 different studies on EMF and the challenge. I'm in California. Our own California Department of Public Health did a study, their own study. They were sued to publish the information by a Berkeley professor. He didn't want any money. He just said, hey, let people know cancer, acoustic nerve challenges, like this stuff is everywhere. We're just ignoring it. The FCC was just sued by Children's Health Defense, Robert Kennedy Jr.'s charity that he helps fight EMF. He's litigated against the agriculture companies. He's litigated against telecom and pharmaceutical companies for the last 30 plus decades. He knows all the deceit and all their tricks in the playbook. They just get a slap on the wrist, they get fined, and then they keep doing what they're doing. But he litigated against the FCC on this rollout of the millimeter waves and the satellites, and he got the court order. Now they have to really relook at the science. Nothing really changed other than the court acknowledged that these numbers don't lie, the science doesn't lie, and he made the FCC go back to relook at their procedural levels they set in 1998 on EMF exposure and SARS absorption and what is considered a safe level. It's not, ionizing is unsafe and non-ioning isn't. This is a whole different world we're living in. We know that any vibration, even low level non-ionizing, still affects our body at dramatically, exponential levels. Obviously, if you do get something like the Havana cohort. So that was on, you might have seen it on 60 Minutes a couple years ago. The first attack on U.S. embassy workers on foreign soil with microwave. It was in Cuba and China. And this was the biggest news. And these guys were having non-trauma concussion symptoms. So they were nausea. They were in the hospital for 6 months from EMF poisoning. And so this stuff is real. It's weaponry. The same bandwidth they're rolling out with 5G, they're used as weapons. So if you can control a crowd from it and use it as a weapon, the studies are there for sure, Eric.
Yeah, because that's like a thing that, I don't hear a lot of people talk about, which is like the actual studies and the actual, science that's been done around this. Like we can say, when you look at physics and you look at waveforms and you look at chemistry, like, yeah, I mean, all of this makes sense. But, I think at the end of the day, it's like, if you could have a mountain of evidence that says, well, yeah, look, it's right there.
We do.
Yeah,
Initiative.org. Yeah. Look up Arthur Furstenberg, and he's big researcher and has cited a lot of stuff. My interview with Tom Cowan is on BitChute. COWAN is his name. You can see he cites a lot of stuff. A lot of the studies I talk about on emfrocks.com in our blog section. So there's so many different resources of years and years of studies. I think it took 17,000 studies for smoking for people to realize that it wasn't beneficial for you. I think we've surpassed that now, but we're still ignoring it because everyone is so obsessed with wanting to communicate. And then I think a lot of it too is a lot of the initiatives, unfortunately, from governments and global agendas to track and trace. I mean, literally, you go to a remote area, Eric, like there's no electricity. Third world countries don't have electricity. They just don't. Like they don't have it. They don't need to be having millimeter waves, phased array beaming down on them. That's not what they need to communicate. So, because they don't even have electricity to charge anything. So the stuff we've been sold has been a bill of goods, and it's for industry profit. And there's a lot of these industries that have a lot of say because they've lobbied so hard for so many years to get where they are. I mean, telecom, pharma, agriculture, these industries have thousands of lobbyists. There's not one lobbyist for health in DC, but yet each of these have thousands. So we got to really relook at what health is. And for me, it's really kind of how I mentioned in the beginning. It's staying connected above. It's nutrition, hydration, exercise, owning your power, loving, touching, smiling, exercise, breathing, and grounding, and really starting to and always smiling, having that inner smile. These are things that you can do on a daily basis, and breathing's free. So let's just build that breath work up and build that life force up. And that's what health is. And then when you get nicked, you're not going to get nicked as hard because you're going to be able to rebound back a lot quicker. When you get hit, you have grounding bags that can recharge you so you don't feel crappy. You can keep your polarization and heal. That's what health is.
Yeah, I love it. And it's so true. There is no health lobbyist in DC. There is no like vitamin D lobbyist or like a mineral balancing lobbyist. There's it's just and I really actually became aware of all this through the book Radiation Nation, which does have some studies. And I think one of the most shocking things that I learned when I read that was the regulations that these telecom companies work off of, as far as like what they're allowed to put out, in terms of, I don't know, EMFs or like power of their products. These were written in 1996 and they have not been updated since. I believe it's 96. When the most powerful cell phone was had the same power of like a couch pillow today, right, compared to like what we have right now in our pockets. So Even if you're skeptical about all this, even if you're like, yeah, I don't know, man, I see 5G towers, I'm like, whatever, I got a phone, I'm like, whatever. Just think about like the insanity that like we're 25 years removed since the last like major telecom legislation, and just think about where phones have gone from then until now, and it's pretty shocking.
Definitely, it is. It really is, and we gotta. I mean, I love having these conversations because they start to educate people on this. And the other big challenge right now, Eric, is the data harvesting that's going on. So your cell phones have trackers, every app from your bank app. They know your retina scan, your fingerprint, your gait, how fast you drive. I mean, the markers that they're checking on you. For me, it's probably the biggest potential threat of our freedoms is this data just harvesting of information from every app, every company. And they say they want to use it to help more efficiently market, but there are some other avenues that they're pursuing with this. And assuming that the CCP can aggregate all this information, our freedoms can be ripped away instantly, because they now know if it's in Dominion, they know where we live, who we voted for. They know, you're driving a foreign car. They know everything about where you're stopping and going, and then they know all your access to all your banking information. They can easily, take over the U.S. in 15 years without firing one bullet potentially. So we roll out Faraday bags. They protect you from the phone. They protect phone from data harvesting. Your phone doubling up on them, there'll be no more contact tracing. Your location doesn't show up on the map. With just one phone, the phone will ring inside of here because frequencies do go in and out of these. But with two of them, they won't. So the phones are so strong, it goes through a 7 ml military grade static bag. It's unbelievable.
Wow. So, okay. So let's kind of close up on all this. So we're looking at the grounding bags. So you keep your phone in the Faraday bag. Are there any other options for protecting yourself? The phone, the person who works with the laptop on their lap, what else is there that they can do?
Definitely. I mean, for protection wise, proximity awareness is a big thing. So, most of the time when I'm at work, I have my router way on the other side of the office, then I have a cord and I plug it in. So my Wi-Fi is off and I connect it into the router, which is way, like 50 feet or more away from me. So I don't have a router right underneath my desk. So, and then my cell phone's in the Faraday bag unless I'm going to use it. So my exposure of millimeter waves for the wireless signals is nominal throughout the day. So that's a really big understanding. You can use also the grounding bag on your desk to protect you from that vibration. We have a mini grounding bag. You put it in your pocket, purse or backpack. So full size is about 1 pound. That's about 2 to 3 ounces. I put it in my pocket and I put my phone on the outside of it. So there's a buffer between, kind of like you were saying, you have a blocking case. Well, that's great, but there's still EMF coming out, and as there would be with my phone, but the only difference is the mini grounding bag is converting that waveform, so it's not disruptive to your body. So you can use it in those capacities. Throw your phone in the Faraday bag when you're not using it. That'll quiet down. If you have to put your laptop on your lap, we have a larger Faraday bag, which is an 8x8. So you would throw an 8x8 underneath your computer, so at least it's not going right into your reproductive organs, because your ovaries absorb 10 times the amount of radiation. Guys' sperm counts plummet with EMF. That's why we're having fertility challenges in a big way. Is a lot of it's from EMF. I mean, I live in Newport Beach on the beach, and there are some of the most beautiful women in the world here in bikinis. And these kids in high school are walking around just numb to it. And I'm just going, when I was that age, it was, the testosterone levels were out of the roof. I wasn't numb to it, but these kids are numb to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's unbelievable. So a lot of it's from so much EMF. They put these computers on their laps for hours, and then the phones up here, earbuds in their inner ear. Remember, your brain has a skull around it. There's an airway canal directly from your ear to your brain. There's no skull there. It's an airway. So when you put an earbud in, that's 2.45 billion waves per second directly in your inner ear, mm-hmm. directly localized on your brain. So anyhow, those are things like proximity awarenesses to some of those challenges. Remember, get the smartwatches off you. That's man-made radiation. I've seen endurance athletes' arms go weak, completely, like not being able to use it from those. So a lot of different areas to look at. Convert your smart meter to analog. That's one of the other biggest components. And Josh Del Sol did a documentary movie called Take Back Your Power, which I highly recommend for everyone to see. Talked about the smart meter. They act like a two-way router and a cell tower on your home. So it'll really mess up a home. So convert it to analog and when possible.
Wow. So many good tips, so many good references. I'm so happy that you were able to throw all those out, because that was actually one of the top things I was wondering. Like, okay, someone will listen to this and they'll go, okay, this Justin guy is really smart. I'm going to go buy his grounding bags, but like, where else can I go to read more information? Because, I do know that this is a topic that is getting a lot more press. I mean, at least in like the world that I live in, because if you go to the mainstream, you're not going to find this anywhere. But people are becoming more aware of it. The testosterone, the fertility issues, the mental health issues, those things that we like think about where you're like, I want the optimal nutrition, and you got the optimal nutrition, but it's just not working for you. And you're like, well, like in the biohacking world, we go, well, what's another thing I can do? Maybe instead of that, go, well, like, what can I take away from this? Like, what electric thing in my life is just kind of there, and I can do something to help ground it, literally ground it and ground myself and get away from these EMFs. So Justin, this was awesome. If somebody would love to learn more about you, check out your grounding bags and your Faraday products, maybe even work with you, where would you send them?
EMFrocks.com for all the EMF products, athleticism.com for our curated health and performance products and my book. And yeah, you'll be able to jump in. It's athletic, ISM is how you spell it. Check it out. You guys will love it. We have soil enhancers. We have an MCT oil called lean oil. Eric, you're getting a care package. And you guys are absolutely going to be obsessed with all the products on athleticism.com. And we sell the grounding bags there as well. So either site will work. And yeah, you guys are going to love it. We're so excited to be on your show and introduce this waveform technology and how to get grounded by nature.
Yeah, I love it. And we'll be sure to, when we release this, link all of the different things that you just mentioned, all the websites, emfrocks.com, athleticism.com, along with all of the different, websites and books and documentaries that you mentioned, because that's a whole host of stuff that, if you got interested by this conversation, and I have no doubt there's people out there who did, follow up with it, go check this stuff out, learn about this topic, because this topic's here to stay. It's not going anywhere, and get ahead of it, learn about it, protect yourself, protect your family, protect your sperm, fellas. That's so important. And protect those ovaries, ladies. We got to make more good people. Justin, thank you so much for joining us on the Holistic Nootropics podcast. Listener, viewer, you know what to do. If you enjoyed this, remember to subscribe, head on over to Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star review. And until next time, peace.
Thank you, Eric.
Thanks for listening. For more brain-boosting info, in-depth articles, and show notes, check out holisticnootropics.com.